This is a true podcast. The events depicted took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2024. At the request of the producers, the names have been changed. Out of respect for the listeners, the rest has been told exactly as it occurred.
With Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick.
Hey there. Hope I'm not bothering you, but I don't want to come off as cross, but we're about to start State of the Franchise. And we cover franchises of all shapes and sizes, just so you know. And, I don't want you to think that I'm being rude or anything, but I just want you to know that we're covering the Fargo. No, I don't want you to jump the gun here. Not the movie, but the TV series. My name is Fred. I'm here with Tom Stadler. How you doing today, Tom?
Oh, doing just fine there, Fred. Well, thanks for so much for introducing this episode,
Oh, geez, it was no problem. I had to take time out of my schedule, but, I had the room, I was willing to do it.
Well, that's wonderful. That just really brings the cheer to my lips here. I'm feeling like I'm smiling right now, and you can probably see that I'm smiling, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah. Even though I'm looking at you through a computer screen, I'm seeing those pearly whites coming in just so clear right now. This is easier for you, I feel.
What? Well, because I think the Fargo accent is not that great of a stone throw away from like what a Wisconsin accent is. So I've heard people my whole life, and I think I have a very subtle Wisconsin accent when I really get into it.
Yeah.
Like if I weren't trying to put on like the whole like schmeal right now, I'd be talking a little more like this, like just having a good time. No, I'm just kidding. It's I'm curious though, Fred, since we are talking about Fargo today, did you see the movie before you moved up to Wisconsin?
Oh, definitely. I got this. Fargo was recommended to me by my 10th grade teacher, and I had never heard of it. I had never heard of the Coen brothers, but I was going through my Tarantino phase, and she recommended Fargo. I remember she was the one I let her borrow like my Dogma DVD. So she was a very cool teacher.
That's awesome.
That was what first time I saw it, and it's probably in my top 5, guaranteed my top 10 movies for sure.
Wow.
It's probably my favorite Coen brothers movie.
I mean, it's definitely an easy one to like. So before you moved here, then, did you think everybody in the Midwest just talked like this, or in the North, I should say?
I still do, man. I still hear it. I still hear it every time. Like sometimes I just I don't pay attention to it, because what was funny, when I lived in Wisconsin for like a year, I went back to Georgia and they all thought I sounded like a Midwestern. And then it doesn't happen as much anymore, but people in Wisconsin always thought I sounded really Georgia, like Southern, and it comes out every once in a while. I feel like maybe if a couple drinks are involved or something, or I like to say y'all. That's fun, but no, I definitely think I still hear it, but it is different. There's definitely one, now that I've lived in the Midwest for the majority of my life, I know that there's different subsets of this Midwestern. This I'll do, even though they just call it Minnesota nice, I'll call it Midwestern nice.
Well, it's kind of a fun little thing that I think everybody has a different perspective on, because I have heard people call it Minnesota nice. I've heard people call it Midwest nice. I've heard the term Iowa nice. And from people, it all depends where they come from. If they're in, grew up in Iowa, if they grew up in Minnesota, and I don't even know. I think there's some debate whether like the Dakotas are really the Midwest, and the show would definitely have you believe that, but they're kind of more, I don't know. It's right on that border of Midwest and Pacific Northwest. So it's like you get a lot of Wyoming in there, is what I feel like.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Dakota, it just sounds nice when you say it in the Midwest accent. So it works.
Dakota, yeah. It's, I don't know, it's funny. It's just the thing that I think always cracked me up about the movie Fargo is that a lot of people who were watching it for the first time in, like, the '90s or whatever were like, "Well, this is a comedy." And other people are if you talk to people in the Midwest, they're like, "Well, this is just straight up a drama." Like, I don't know what's so funny about this movie. And it's like because people from that speak like this don't really hear the accent, and it's already slipping through. It's gonna happen a lot of times here, Fred, in this
It's
episode.
hard not to, you know?
It's
Uh,
hard. No, yeah, you know, yeah, no, yeah.
yeah, but that's funny to think about that people just watch that here and they're like, yeah, this is just a normal set of circumstances that are horrible. That's true, but there's nothing funny about it.
No, no, nothing. I don't know what you guys are laughing about. Oh, because everybody talks a little funny up here. Is that what you're? That's a little rude. A little rude, if I must say so myself.
And that's what the movie definitely plays in is kind of like this dark niceness and then this like darkness. And I think that's part of why it's so successful and why they might want to make, you know, a TV series based off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the TV series, I think you can outright call a dark comedy or a black comedy if you want to. I don't know. It's just interesting because I think it does one of the better jobs, the TV show especially, of balancing comedy and like kind of like intense drama because there are moments where you are laughing at the circumstances and the ridiculous characters. And then there are moments where you're just like, okay, this person is terrifying. And if I ever encountered them in my life, I feel like I would be not alive for much longer.
It definitely there's this it's definitely that feeling. Well, that's the whole thing. People say like being afraid and laughing is the same, you know, it's like the same effect in movies. So with that show, I think, or even just the movie itself, they are just kind of doing that fine line between humor and horror, even though more like suspense, I guess, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think the way we originally positioned this episode, Fred, was going to be around the show, but my understanding is they all live in the same universe. I think we could talk a little more about the movie if we want to spend some time on it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I know the first season like ties it directly in there with like the Oliver Platt storyline. He's the
Mhm.
one that finds the money that the whole movie, the first movie's kind of centered around.
Right. Yeah, the buried money in the snow.
And I didn't realize also, I know it's like we're talking same world, but like just connections. I was rewatching some of season two and I didn't realize like the you know grandpa or the dad from the original Fargo is like the guy who died, like the boss, mob boss that dies in the beginning of season two. It's like the same actor.
Oh, wow. I did not realize that. That's pretty
Hmm.
crazy. Well, I guess the world is just as small or large, I guess, in this case, as we would say, even though Fargo feels like such a small town. But the world building is so big. And yeah, I don't know that I came across Fargo. I mean, I knew of the movie for a long time. I remember my parents renting it back when it came out, back in like 95, 96, and I never wasn't allowed to watch any of it. That was one they definitely were like, this is not for kids," even though I caught a glimpse of, like, the scene with Buscemi going into the wood chipper, and that
Oh
was a little
geez.
disturbing. It was one of those jobs where, like, in order to get to the kitchen, you had to go past the living room. So I would constantly, like, keep going back for, like, snacks and, like, catch a peek at what was going on the TV, and I just remember at that part, I was like, "Oh." The 9-year-old me was just like, "No."
Yeah, that'd be the moment to see it.
Oh, man. Yeah, brutal, but I finally got to catch the movie, I think, in full finally within the last yeah, maybe even, like, 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Somewhere in that range. It was not long ago that I finally watched it, and I think it was right around the time that I became aware of the TV show, so It's definitely all kind of mixed in for me. It's not really a whole separate entity of like going from the movie and then 10 years or 15 years later, the show gets announced. Or I guess it'd be 20 years at this rate, but we can kind of get into that.
Oh wow, yeah. For me, it was like I remember the show being announced and Fargo was big, and there was like stink on the show because everyone was like, "That sounds awful. Why would you do that? The Cohen brothers have nothing to do with it. No one's interested in this." And they dropped the first 2 episodes, and after watching them, I was like, "Oh man, this is how adaptions of all sorts should be."
Yeah, just taking like the idea of the story and kind of like finding something similar to say. And that's the magic trick that I think this entire show has accomplished is how do you find a similar pattern or theme and make something out of it? Or kind of make it feel like it's part of the same world because there always are these strange circumstances where you get somebody who thinks they can commit a crime and get away with it and nobody ever
Mhm.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, and I gotta say, this is kind of a genre of story that I find so cozy. Winter crime, I just
Mm.
love it. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen A Simple Plan. That's like the Sam Raimi movie.
I have not, but I'm familiar with the band.
It's
I'm a
very similar.
dick. I'm addicted to you.
Mhm. You gotta watch A Simple Plan, directed by Sam Raimi. It's got Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton in probably his best role, question mark. And it's just one of those like finding a pile of money and like, oh, I can totally keep this and there won't be any repercussions and this won't tear at the fabric of my life type of movies, but set in snow. That's just like I love that. I love the movie The Ice Harvest, the John Cusack, Hateful Eight, a movie we've talked about on this podcast. Not my favorite movie, but if it's snowing outside like it is right now, I'm kind of in the mood to throw on a little snowy crime.
Loving that feeling of just being cozy up by the fireplace and having that snowfall outside and watching people try to get away with crimes.
Exactly. Just like, stirring stuff up, heel turns. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say before, maybe Billy Bob's best role up until Fargo season one, because
Ooh, it is good. I like it because he kind of just feels like it feels dumb to say a Cohen brothers character, but he does. Like he just feels like kind of like the amalgam of what I think Fargo is in a character, but also like a demon.
yeah. Well, let's dive a little bit into the history and some of the highlights that came along the way with Fargo. So, for anyone who's not familiar with the movie, it's about a sheriff whose name is Marge Gunderson. Marge Gunderson, sorry. I gotta say it the way that
Margie.
everyone knows. Margie, who's played by Frances McDormand, and she is a pregnant Minnesota police chief investigating a triple homicide that takes place after a desperate car salesman, played by William H. Macy, hires 2 criminals to kidnap his wife in order to extort a ransom from her wealthy father. I mean, so right there in the description, I think, as we were just talking about before, this is kind of like what all of Fargo is. It's like these like weird plans that if anybody ever tried to explain them to you, they're like, you're never going to get away with that.
Hmm.
But yet you get these desperate, kind of not super intelligent people that try to execute this stuff. And it just creates a chain of events that drags everybody within the circumference of it into this void.
Yeah, and that's what the show captures from the movie, as well as this. I don't know how best to describe it other than kind of operatic tone with the comedy and the opening credits of Fargo has this great score and it builds and it's very kind of showy in its filmmaking while the rest of the movie is kind of like, oh, here's some people talking, down home, but there is some really unique flourishes and the show definitely capitalizes on that. I'd say they even build upon that. They go kind of very flourishy, they make some choices.
They definitely do. I think it's definitely a a story that's yeah, it's stylish. It's got that Coen Brothers kind of look to it. It's got that sound because they're always like looking for like these scores that kind of like are unsettling in a way so that you sort of remember them. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I think of like even like No Country for Old Men. There's something about the way that movie looks and sounds that you just are like you're intrigued, but you're never comfortable.
Right. Something that was going on at this time that people were mirroring, that this movie mirrors or does the same but differently, that was hot at the time, is that kinetic quick dialogue, that the movie almost feels like it's doing a Tarantino thing, but it's not. It's just similar. And
Mhm.
because it's similar, I think it just is hitting at the time, like in pop culture. Like the dialogue simmers in this movie, and that's another thing they pick up from the show is kind of unique, very Tarantino-y dialogue.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good way of putting it, that it's got a rhythm, and I think a lot of Coen Brother movies do even have that, like, it's almost become a staple of them that you can tell that people are just, like, they're on script, they have it down, and they're just kinda rattling through their lines, like, they know exactly what they're saying, but, like, there is I think it's just because sometimes the accents too in this that it just makes it feel like you are talking to your neighbor in Milwaukee versus like, some guy you would live in like a flat in New York, There's just it's a little more simple for him to kind of be coming up and talking about that. You know what people think about these things, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I just love that there's so many characters that just have that like broad Midwestern vibe to them in the movie, in the TV series. Like I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily just find it comforting or if I it's hard to say that I think it feels like real life because it doesn't. It's definitely heightened, but there is something real about it.
There is, yeah. And I mean, I don't know that anybody embodied that better than William H. Macy in the movie. And there was a story he told where he was like auditioning somewhere else and he heard that they were going to do more auditions in New York. And so he got in an airplane and went to New York and went to the audition again and said, I want to read this again because I'm scared you're going to screw this up and hire someone else. And I guess they were like, yeah, he's like, he was so insistent that this was his role that they were just like, yeah, he was absolutely right. We were not quite sure, but then when he came back, we were like, yep, this is the right guy.
Yeah, and he's coming to Milwaukee to show the movie, I think, in January, February.
Is that right, Macy?
Yeah, Macy's doing a Q&A with Fargo.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. He's a Wisconsin guy, isn't he?
I would think he's Midwest of some sort because he's just too darn good.
Yeah. Oh, nope. 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 He is from the fine Midwest town of Miami, Florida.
What? What?
uh yeah, says he was born in Miami, grew up in Georgia and Maryland. But gosh, he does a
Is
good
he
Midwest accent.
I don't know if he's an undersung actor because he did get kind of a great run on that Shameless show, which is a show I've watched most of and liked, but he's just a very consistent guy to have in your movie or TV show.
Oh yeah. Well, you're never gonna get a shortened or a shortcut performance from him. He's gonna put it all into whatever you ask him to do.
I always recommend if people have ever seen the Cooler, the movie where he apparently this is a thing in real life at casinos. They have a guy that walks around and he's just bad vibes. And that's his job, is that he's just like a schlubby bad vibe guy. So if someone's doing really well on a roll at a table, they send in fucking William H. Macy all schlubby to like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll play this card. And it messes up the whole game. And it's kind of a great movie. Alec Baldwin's like the casino boss, and it's a good one.
That's amazing. I have not heard of that, but now I definitely want to watch. I just love William H. Macy. There's really nothing that he's been bad in, I feel like. And to your exact point there, it sounds like a perfect role for him.
Hmm.
So the movie Fargo was filmed during the winter of 1995, which occurred mainly in the Minneapolis St. Paul area and around Pembina County in North Dakota. But I guess they actually had low snowfall totals in Minnesota that winter. So they had to go to northern Minnesota and northeastern North Dakota in order to get like shots of people in the snow because there just was nothing in the Twin Cities that year.
Yeah, they were chasing the snow around to get footage, and I know that they ended up pretty close to where they were shooting Mallrats at the time.
Oh, is that right?
Kind of like a No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood situation. You know
Oh,
about
that makes
that?
sense. No, I don't. Did those movies
Those
shoot like
movies came out the same year, and they're shot at the same time. And apparently, like I know there's like a Josh Brolin interview where like Daniel Day-Lewis came rolling by on a bicycle and was just like, "Get out of the road," and like doing like the Daniel Plainville voice.
wow. That's kind of like the perfect like I don't know. Those movies look and feel like kind of similar, just the only thing that's off is the time periods, right?
So does Fargo and Mallrats.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess there is a very light DNA share between them. But the movie so it had that discrepancy stating like this is a true story, which I opened the podcast with in the cold open. And there's been a lot of debate over the years whether this was actually based on a real event or not, because I think the widely accepted thing is that there is like brief inspiration from a somewhat similar story, but like nothing else is the similar. It's pretty much an original screenplay.
Yeah, I'm sure it's kind of like it was probably like a Florida Man headline at the time, at best. You know what I'm saying? Like
Y-
it was probably a thing, but not the thing.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it was. Like they heard about a story about man sets up a kidnapping of wife and to try and extort, and like then she gets caught. Like they probably read something like that. Like that's a crazy story. We could write a whole script around that concept. You know, it's like people trying to write a movie about Pirates of the Caribbean, right? It's like you could probably you get a general sense for what it is. So the movie was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, which it won, and then Frances McDormand won for Best Actress. Macy did not win for Best Supporting Actor, but man, she's great in this too.
I also love John Carroll Lynch in he's
Oh
the
yeah, he plays her.
husband.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
he's
he's
always good. He's kind of a William H. Macy type, just a solid heavy hitter that's gonna be in your movie.
again another guy who he'll never short you on what you want him to do. He'll just kind of sit there. It's like, okay, we just need you to be a doting husband and get up with her in the morning and make breakfast, and it's just perfect.
Hmm.
I always remember him as Drew Carey's brother, though, too, in the Drew Carey show.
Man, they need to do something about that Drew Carey show. I don't know why that's not on HBO or something. You can't get it anywhere. That was like my favorite show, and I didn't know that he played his brother. That makes it even worse because I always love him in Zodiac because he's just like he does the Fargo thing but creepy pretty much. Like the
Oh, yeah.
if you're curious about those knives, I had killed a chicken earlier for my dinner. You know, he's just like a creep.
He is, yeah. Man, he's great in Zodiac. But yeah, I mean, he keeps showing up in a lot of stuff. And he's just one of those people where when you see him come on screen, you're like, oh, yes. Like, okay, I'm well taken care of because I know this person's going to make a character that probably was very like shallowly written in the script come to life. Like he's just going to just bring something extra to it.
Yep. And if you don't know who we're talking about, if you type in John Carroll Lynch into Google, you're going to be like, oh, that guy.
That guy. Yeah. I mean, and we can't overlook, I think, Steve Buscemi and Peter
Stromer.
Stormare. Yeah, because I think we can't really get into talking about the show without mentioning the two criminals that get hired because they kind of become, I think them and Macy and Francis McDormand are all kind of the archetypes of all the characters we continue to see for every season. You have kind of like the aw shucks cop who turns out to be very competent. You have the kind of imbecile like regular Joe who just tries to commit the most devious act of his life. And then you have like sort of like a cocky, big mouth criminal, but you also have like that silent, really cold, like serious guy who is willing to kind of do whatever needs to be done. And you could really cast, I think, one person per season of Fargo into each one of those character archetypes.
Definitely.
And I think that gives us a chance to even talk about season 1 of Fargo, unless you have more you would like to share on just the movie.
No, I think it's best to get into it.
Great. So Fargo starts with season 1, which takes place in 2006, but it was actually in the year 2012 in real life that FX announced that with the Coen brothers on as executive producers, that they were developing a new television series based on the film with Noah Hawley as the show creator. And it was later announced that the adaptation would be a 10-episode limited series, which is kind of interesting to read back on now because it obviously was not going to be just a limited series in the long run.
Well, I'm curious if that was the case because I could totally see the idea of season one being a one off. I'm glad it wasn't because I think they definitely have. I think we can both say we really like this series. I think they do a good job with Fargo and bringing it back. And I love they make big swings, but I could see if they just came out with season one and didn't do anything else, that it was a closed thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would not be the first show to be based on an adapted property that had something to say. And then, like Watchmen came out in 2019, very much an adaptation and a continuation of the graphic novel slash the movie, but they had no plans for season 2, and it's very unlikely it's ever going to happen. Like, it's the perfect example of like, here's a limited series, but again, kind of to what we've set up here with the dressing for the show is that they have found a way to go beyond just like, oh, we have a limited series that's kind of similar to the movie, but just different enough, and we're going to leave it at that. Like they've kind of found a core concept and sort of these core pieces of the story that they can keep replicating in different locations and with different people and different time frames and all of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the most exciting thing about Fargo to me as a television show, not just the movie, is that they are doing reboot, prequel. I'm using broad terms because they do work in the same world, but they also kind of do their own thing. They are rebooting, they are requeling, they are prequeling, they are sequeling. But this is how you do it. You do new stories like and in a world where we're getting so many sequels and so many of these prequel sequel things, I kind of find whether or not you think the Fargo seasons individually are successful, I think they're doing the best stuff with material that already exists.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I think it's an interesting thing you just kind of said there because I think it's a shared universe that's built like an anthology is kind of how the show is. And it's weird to pull that together because I don't think anything else does that. Like you'll have anthology series like, oh, I don't know.
What about the American Horror Stories?
That's probably the other thing that's done this to a much less successful extent.
Mhm.
Because I think those shows are connected, right? Like there's always kind of the same seed of like, oh, it's the same world, but here's New Orleans versus
Yep,
I don't
and
even.
the anthology series did build upon like the original series and stuff.
Okay. But yeah, I think it's doing it extremely well in the case of Fargo. And it's yeah, everything feels the same, but it is different, even if there are characters who we are seeing different age versions of, like in the case of seasons 1 and 2 with um I think it's Molly Salverson or
Yeah,
Salverson.
Sulverson.
Yep, her dad is in season 1. But that gets us into, I think, the plot of season 1. So filming began on the first season in Calgary, Alberta, Canada in late 2013, concluded in 2014. So the show premiered on April 15th, 2014, and concluded its initial airing that June. So it was a very quick run, these 10 episodes that they did, but hit pretty hard. I think a lot of critics really liked it. So the story revolves around Lorne Malvo, who's played by Billy Bob Thornton. He comes through Bemidji, Minnesota, and kind of influences the community a little bit because he meets an insurance salesman named Lester Nygaard, and he is just kind of like, I don't know, at the kind of the bottom of for his life. He's just sort of hit like rock bottom, I think, mentally and like emotionally, until he kind of meets this guy, and then suddenly he kind of gets fed up with life, murders his wife in his basement, and the only person he can think is to call this dude who is just completely unhinged. And it kind of gets them tied up together into this whole little situation and this investigation of this murder, or the don't they kind of like sell it as an accidental death to the cops?
Yes.
Yeah, so that involves Molly Salverson, and then she gets mixed up with a guy who, another police officer in Duluth, Minnesota, who's played by Colin Hanks, named Gus Grimley. And they kind of team up to try and solve this series of murders that they believe might be linked to both Malvo and Nygaard. And it kind of sets off just this crazy chain of events where anybody, again, who gets caught into their whirlpool, so to speak, they just end up in bad spaces here.
This was huge because this was the first one that came out that was kind of reformatting the Fargo story and did it really successful. Like I remember watching, like I said, they dropped the first 2 episodes and I went in kind of like with my arms folded, like this is gonna be bad. And I remember watching the first 2 episodes, like, oh, this has the gas, this has the juice. And Billy Bob Thornton, who is a collaborator with the Coen brothers, so it's kind of like a seal of approval almost that he's in that first season. And also something that was kind of cool about that first season had Key and Peele in it for an episode.
That's right. Did.
And like, I mean, Key and Peele is still a big deal. I think most people more now know Jordan Peele's the filmmaker, but that it was just of that time where Key and Peele was a big show on FX. I'm pretty sure. No, it was Comedy Central. I think it moved to FX eventually.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that front.
But it was definitely in the zeitgeist. It was bringing stuff in like Key and Peele, and I don't remember hearing anything bad about season 1. I think when season 2 came out, I think that's when some of the Noah Hawley weirdness of the show started kind of turning people away a little bit. But I think season 1 is kind of tight and unassailable almost.
Yeah, I mean, I think even today, and at the time of recording, we're not quite done with season 5. We'll stay tuned and talk a little more about that. But I think even now, most people will still probably say season 1 is the best of the series still.
I say that, but it's not my favorite.
So it's like The Empire Strikes Back, like probably the best movie, but you might love like A New Hope or something.
Yeah, like I am a person who I think Empire is the best and is my favorite. But if I was one of those like Empire is the best, but I really love those Ewoks, man.
I am one of those people, Fred.
I figured you were.
I loved the Ewoks.
Go watch a Jim Henson movie then.
I will, man. I will. Don't you even question it. I got Muppet Treasure Island in the queue.
Let's not get terse.
I do love the way that season 1 flow. So when you started watching this, you were watching this live, or did you go back and find it years later?
No, I watched it. Like I said, I follow this from the inception of they announced a Fargo TV show, and I said, dumb, stupid, I know movies. I am very smart. I am, when did this come out? 2012. I am
2014.
22 years old. You don't know shit. you know? And I was very wrong about this particular occasion. But I've seen season 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as they aired.
Wow.
I did not
That
finish season 4.
Yeah, we'll get to 4. I think, unfortunately, kind of like you were saying earlier too, some of the big swings, and they're commendable big swings. I think they are always trying to push the envelope and do something that makes it feel different. But season 4 was almost just a little too big of a swing outside of the lines of what we're familiar with.
But season 1's tight.
It sets the tone really well, I think, as you said too, is just what you're finding again is people who kind of fill those archetypes you were talking about before. Like Billy Bob's character of Malvo is very much that Peter Stormare kind of character in the movie Fargo. Like he's very cold. He's kind of calculating. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. Like he makes a decision. He's going to go commit the kill without really thinking about it. Then you have Martin Freeman playing Lester Nygaard, and he's a little more of that William H. Macy. Oh, gosh darn, he's low. We's, very aw shucks type guy who, at the end of the day, is a pretty horrible human being deep down.
Yeah.
But if you met him, that couldn't be Lester. No, you're talking about the wrong guy. I picked on this guy forever. Man, and he even has his bully, right? Like come into his like insurance office and just kind of like still is taking it years later.
Yep, it was like the guy who like had relations with his now wife, like did something with her in high school, and that's like the whole thing. Like, so they have this, tension.
Yeah, right.
His bully is still going after him.
Yeah, after all these years. And I think, for people who've ever been bullied, you know that like even if you run into your bully years later, it's never better. You're always mistrusting of that person. But then you have I think I said before, there's only 4 archetypes, but I think as much as Molly Solverson is really much in that Frances McDormand character mold from the movie, Colin Hanks is very much in that John Carroll Lynch mold too. He's a very like, even though he's a cop, he's like a nice guy, and all he wants to do is deliver mail, and like that's his life dream.
Yeah. Yep, and he's got a little bit of William H. Macy because he did let Billy Bob Thornton go at that one point, and it was the wrong
Yep.
thing. But I think that's kind of the point of his character, is kind of like the juxtaposition and the choice to do the right thing, which I think the shows, plural, are very like morality based, like fables.
Yeah, they are a little bit, because I think it kind of shows that like they do such a great job of balancing. I think what you're saying is like the life lessons that you can learn of like, well, if you're a genuinely good person, like you don't have to be fake nice all the time. It's like good things are gonna happen, but if you're really a selfish kind of terrible individual like Martin Freeman's character was, it's like, yeah, bad things are going to end up coming back around to get you. And I mean, that whole season, he's really trying to just get away with these crimes. And it's just like one crime begets another and another. And he's hiring these guys to like help him like murder, other people. And it's pretty crazy. I almost forgot that Bob Odenkirk was in the first season too.
I was trying to remember which season he was in, but he's in the first. I love it.
Yeah, he's another member of the police department that works directly with Molly, but he's kind of a dope, and he's just like very full of himself. Like, come on, that's not what happened. What are you talking about? Clearly, it's exactly as the guy said.
For sure.
It's not my best Odenkirk, but
I'll
I'm
take it.
trying to
It
hit the
was good. It
tone.
was cooking. I liked it.
But yeah, oh my god, and then Glenn Howerton, I forgot that he's in it too.
I can't even remember that he's in season 1.
He's like I think he's kind of like the simple like guy. I think he's like always on like the exercise bike and something like too. Like
Oh god. Yeah, but that's the thing that they kind of do with that's kind of becoming a staple of the Fargo series is we're gonna have some names tied to the show.
yep.
And everyone's
And
gonna be doing an accent.
yep. And we're gonna keep seeing what everybody's got. Yeah, because he ends up getting like caught up in it. Like I think he kind of gets uh does he work for Oliver Platt? Is that what I'm trying to remember here
I
now?
think so. That sounds more familiar now.
Yeah, like, and then he thinks he's about to get away with like stealing his money, and he ends up getting killed for it because the police like come in like shooting because he's like tied to the bike and he can't get
Right.
off of it. So they just start. They're like, "Come out with your hands up," and he can't physically can't do it, and so they just kill him by shooting through the door.
I can picture that, and I can just picture Glenn Howerton just really, really putting the syrup on the accent.
Ugh, totally. Especially after seeing him in Blackberry, I could definitely like just kind of that subtle Canadian like.
Definitely.
Like a mix of that character and his character of Dennis. But yeah, it's a great first season. There's a lot of twists, and yeah, I think we see kind of exactly what happens in the movie too. The fake nice guy, aw shucks guy kind of gets his comeuppance, and ultimately the sheriff and she gets her man, and all that ends well at the end. Billy Bob is kind of brought to justice, and everything else kind of falls into place. But then we get to season 2. So following a series renewal that happened about a month after the first season ended, so it was July 2014, Noah Hawley revealed that the second season would take place in 1979 and be focused on Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which was referred to by Molly's dad, Lou Salverson, the character in the first season, remembering like a crime that felt similar. So we got this immediate tie-in, and we did a flashback to season 2, or flashback, yeah, that became the plot of season 2.
Yep, season 2 is kind of a prequel to season 1, which is pretty cool. They're tying things together and using a different Midwestern area.
What were your thoughts on season 2 then when you finally got to watch that as it came out? Did you think you liked it better than the first one at first?
Like I said, I think season 1 is kind of the tightest, the best, but season 2 is him beginning to try things, adding more style to it and broadening and adding more characters. And I think it's pretty successful. I think there's great tension. You have Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons. I don't know if I think this might have been the start of their relationship. I might have
I think
been
it
on the
was.
set of
Yep.
Fargo season 2. You also have my guy, one of the last old school Hollywood actors, Patrick Wilson, just like serving just Midwest on a plate.
Yep.
And what's his name? Zahn McLaren, that's his name. That's kind of like the first time I was introduced to him. And I just think this season is electric. It's kind of more out there. It's definitely not as tight as season 1, but I love it.
Yeah, he my goodness. I mean, the names kind of go deep again in this season. I think that's again the thing that they do so well. I mean, there's bit parts from Ted Danson kind of in just a bit role.
Ted Danson is so good in season 2. I also love the guy from Burn Notice is pretty great.
Oh, who's that?
I don't know, but people know I'm talking about if I say the Burn Notice guy.
Yeah. But it's just, yeah, I think you're right though. And it does start to lean more into the weird because Ted Danson, his whole character thing is like he's been tracking like alien activity.
There's an alien plot in this series, in this season, I should say. Doesn't really get paid off or anything, but there is one.
Yeah. Oh, doesn't get paid off. I don't know if you're being serious or not because my
I guess
goodness.
it's not satisfying.
I I think that is the only reason the UFO subplot is the only reason season 2 is not like one of the best seasons of TV I've ever watched because that whole thing just caught me so by surprise to the point where I'm like I sat there after like this episode is over. I mean, we'll have to get into why the plot even goes this direction, but I just sat there afterward like, did that really happen? Like, what?
Well, I'm just gonna be Marty McFly on this one. I'm gonna say, I guess you guys weren't ready for that one, but your kids are gonna love it because aliens are cool.
Oh man, unreal. But yeah, so I mean, the whole idea here is that, or this plot is, so Kirsten Dunst's character named Peggy Blomquist, she accidentally has a hit and run with a child of like the mob family in the area.
Played by Kieran Culkin.
Yeah. Another great name that just got brought in.
Yeah, it's like this old school German family gang or mafia type in the Midwest that the youngest son gets accidentally killed in a situation where he kills a court like judge,
Mm-hmm.
and the person who hits the youngest son is Kirsten Dunst, and they kind of go into a spin of they try to cover it up, and then the gangster family goes after them. It's good stuff.
Yeah, so it's the Gearhart family.
Gerhardt.
Yeah, Gearhart family, which is a very yeah, a very like Midwest sounding family name. And the matriarch of the family, who's now like in charge of it, is Gene Smart, who also is excellent. Speaking of Watchmen from 2019, he's also in that. But
Oh, Watchmen, that's a great show. I'd love to throw that on. Where can I watch that?
I don't know. I don't. I would have said HBO, but it's not HBO anymore.
Is it? It's not on HBO, but is it on Max?
No, it's not, Fred. See, they gotta pull shows and put them into the vault for who knows what reasons.
Well, Jean Smart, everyone knows her from Homeward Bound. She let the animals get out.
Is she the mom in that movie?
No, she is the person they leave the pets with, who the pets get away from. Like, she owns the farm where they get dropped off that they escape from.
I like that. That's the poll you get for Gene Smart on this.
Oh, for sure.
Who is? I think she's another actor now that I would say another person that you can put her into anything and she'll give you 110% of whatever role you want her to play. Another great Max, not HBO show that she's in is called Hacks, and my God, just a tour de force by her in that entire thing.
Yep, and this has been a renaissance for her since Fargo season 2. I feel like she's been around, but she's popped since season 2, and now with Hacks, she's big, big deal.
Yeah, I mean, just outstanding. So she's leading this family, and they're kind of trying to get some answers on who killed their son. And even though nobody likes him, like they all knew he was a schlub, but they're still like, you can't just go and kill our family, which is kind of a running theme throughout this show. That even if they are not the loved member of the family, the family will go to war over them. And
for sure.
Yeah, so you got Patrick Wilson, who's playing the young version of Lou Salverson, as you mentioned in this. Just a great role for him. And Ted Danson is the sheriff of Rock County, and he's his father-in-law. So he works with his father-in-law. And then the Gearharts are also at war with the Kansas City Mafia, who we see again later. But yeah, so they are investigating a triple homicide are the sheriffs, and they get connected between the Gearharts and the Kansas City Mafia. So it's a lot of different wheels moving. Oh man, I was trying to remember the guy who plays Mike Milligan. I think his name
Kansas City Mafia, headed up by Brad Garrett.
is. That's right.
Everybody loves Raymond.
This isn't the guy from Burn Notice, is it? Bokeem Woodbine? The guy who plays Mike Milligan?
I refer to him as character actor Dave Chappelle.
He does have some Dave Chappelle energy to him for sure.
I love Bokeem Woodbine. He is, and this is another like him and Zane, they both just like came out of here popping. I mean, Bokeem Woodbine has been around for a while, but they are both like magnetic in season 2 of Fargo.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the character was so good they basically built season 4 off of like his sub story, right? Like, yeah, I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff over the years, but it's just it's such an interesting power struggle. And I love that character of Mike Milligan's story because he's doing like all this. Like he's like, I'm gonna go take care of business up in South Dakota. I'm gonna bring home, all this territory and this power for you, all just to get a desk job. They're like, look at this office you can have. Now you can work at corporate. And it's like, oh, this is all I get. I'm not gonna be a mob boss. I'm gonna be a desk jockey.
For sure. He's excellent.
So good. But it's a fascinating season because I think we keep going back and forth in this war. We keep following Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst as they're trying to kind of get away from this after, they finally get outed and people figure out that they're involved and that they had something to do with Kieran Culkin's death. And, and Sam McLaren is just playing this absolute, just terrifying killer. Again, that character archetype of like that cold, calculating killer who's not afraid to pull the trigger when he absolutely needs to. Like he's the first person to step in and being like, okay, you need a job done, I'm going to do it.
He's very Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Yes. Oh, Bardem would absolutely slay in this series. Like he would fit it because he's such a Coen actor.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But we eventually kind of see all the plots meld together in this showdown where they have found the Blomquists and they're chasing them down through a parking lot. And there's this showdown with the Kansas City Mafia and the Gearharts. And all of a sudden, a UFO appears overhead and distracts everyone when it seems like some of our characters that we've been following are about to all die.
Totally normal, totally good.
And it just happens. It's like a solid 30 seconds. This light comes from overhead. Everybody looks up. UFO moves on. Fucking guy, the only competent son in the Gearhart family dies. I'm trying to remember who plays him. He plays a great part though. This might be your burn notice, dude. Is it Angus Sampson who plays Bear Gearhart?
No, it's the other brother.
Jeffrey Donovan?
That's him, yeah.
Okay. Who played Dodd Gearhart, yeah. It's all coming back now. It's coming back. Oh man, you had Kristen Milotti. I forgot she was like Patrick Wilson's wife.
Yep, it's a stacked season. You have Bruce Campbell as Reagan.
Bruce Campbell is in this. You're right. Oh my god.
Yeah, he plays Ronald Reagan going to the bathroom at one point.
And I almost forgot that the patriarch, the late patriarch of the Gearhart family, Otto Gearhart, played by Michael Hogan, once again, our boy from Battlestar Galactica who took that tumble down the stairs and had the Kickstarter going on.
Oh, geez.
Remember, that was the guy that Jasmine brought up on that episode.
Uh-huh.
Again, you just got people coming in from left and right, putting in work. But that guy, another guy who puts in a 110% every time he's on screen. He's just all in.
So, other than the aliens, what are your overall thoughts of season 2?
I mean, fantastic. I think the my best review that I ever read of this is like it's almost unfair to put in your last episode the song War Pigs and not expect everybody watching it to get absolutely amped up, because I think that there's this sequence right at the beginning of the last episode where it's just Zan McLaren like looking into the camera, and it keeps cutting between him and like Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst like on the run, and they're just like beat to shit, like they're like on their last legs, they can't like do anything about it, and he just looks like this angry, just like almost like mutated killer. And it's just the culmination. I'm like, this is what the season is. It's just thrills, it's suspense, it's like twists and turns that you can't expect. Like every time you think somebody's about to get killed, you think Jesse Plemons is about to get shot, or that they're about to find Kirsten Dunst. Like all of a sudden something happens and they're able to get away at the last minute, and somebody else ends up dead, and they're like, what is happening? Who are these people? How do they keep getting away with this? It's, I think maybe for me, this would be probably my favorite season.
Yep, that's the same. This is the one I revisited. I didn't really need to revisit any of these except maybe 4, just because I didn't finish it. But I revisited season 2, and it's still good.
It's just suspenseful storytelling masterclass. Like if you could get past some of the weird UFO parts, the rest of it is just excellent. Every actor is super well cast. Every person involved with this is just on their A game. And like it's Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst, I think, before they were kind of hitting like the Plemons sort of like coming out party, and then Kirsten Dunst kind of with her renaissance again, where it just felt like they captured them at the right time, and then they just kind of relaunched each of them into this almost like stardom that they're at now.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was probably what, around the same time or right before Game Night came out. Jesse Plemons is just
How can that be profitable for Frito-Lay?
that line kills me. Ugh, that underrated movie, but I know we're not here to talk about that.
Yeah, Game Night's great. I watched Dungeons and Dragons the other day.
Yep,
Same guys.
it's, I can't wait for their next movie. They're now on that list of like, I want to see what they do next.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to share about season 2? I think the whole gang war kind of dynamic is something that I think they really liked doing, and they really tried to bring back in season 4 to a less successful extent. It
Yes, but I love like period piece cold mafia stuff. I think that is fascinating. Like mafia working out in like the Midwest, Kansas City. Like I find that all fascinating. That's just some of the juice
yeah.
of the show, even though it doesn't really pay off in season 4. I think it does a lot of good stuff in season 2. That's interesting. With
Yeah. It's kind of like an aw shucks Godfather, you know.
Yeah.
Because I think we're almost underselling just how suspenseful it is. Because I think something that even season 5 is doing right now, and I don't know how many people have actually seen season 5 if they're listening to this, but what season 2 is doing really well is it's like, or what it does really well is it kind of starts as like a series of like accidents that sort of set off the dominoes to create this full out gang war. Because up till then, it's just a lot of like sneering and stare downs and like talking the talk, but not really walking the walk, until blood starts getting shed here by accident because of this couple that really just doesn't have any skin in the game. And it just suddenly it's like, yeah, the cops are questioning people. They see the gang, see them coming around. They're like, well, okay, so now we're gonna have to lay it down here. We're gonna actually have to go to war here. And it's just chaos. I mean, the last 2 episodes are so well executed, but it is madness.
And that's definitely how I feel Fargo can go when it comes to each of their seasons. Is it's very tight, very suspenseful, and then it does kind of like fall out of their hands at the end. But
Yeah.
I still love it no matter what.
Yeah, well, it is. It's just this tension rope that's being pulled the whole time as you're kind of watching the dominoes go knocked over one at a time until all of a sudden the whole thing just goes down. And something so they take a different approach though in season 3. Um so following season 2 to a lot of again great critical acclaim, we see the season 3 get picked up. This time it takes place in 2010. We have a St. Cloud, Minnesota probation officer named Ray Stussy or Stussy, right?
Stussy, something like that.
And that's played by Ewan McGregor. And he has his parolee girlfriend, Nikki Swango. It's been a while since I've seen this. I'm trying to remember how the names are pronounced. It was played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think also where they met. Am I right?
Yep. Fargo, that's where you hit it off.
Yeah, no kidding. They're like every male and female lead are just like, okay, well, let's see what this person's about. So they're kind of like looking to get ahead in life, and Ray believes that the best way to get this better, wealthier life is to steal back this valuable vintage stamp from his successful twin brother named Emmett, who is also played by Ewan McGregor, who is the self-proclaimed parking lot king of Minnesota.
I also love this about Fargo is like rich Midwest.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
like just filthy rich, but I live in Minnesota. Like I don't know. There's something funny about that to me. I don't know why.
Well, because it's like it's never the lavish life you expect. You almost like their idea of like riches and all that, or it's way different than like an LA person's idea of rich, right? Like they want a beachfront property with like really nice like jacuzzi or something like that. But yeah, like Emmett Stussy is like, oh yeah, I really like my fine art and a big old Christmas tree or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, so Emmett though is kind of being so this is the rich brother is being encountered by this guy who's a loan shark representing an organization he borrowed money from that's kind of coming to collect and kind of coming to get to what's his, played by David Thewlis, and maybe the most disgusting character
This is the most disgusting season of Fargo. There is a lot of disgusting stuff in it.
Yeah. Oh, it's just this awful character who has sort of like this really like I don't know, this like cloying theme song that comes along with it. And he's always talking like that. He's doing the really thick British accent, like just a total rapscallion.
He's very similar to his character in Dragonheart. That's what I always think. He's just very much an asshole like that.
Oh, I've never seen Dragonheart.
You gotta see Dragonheart. The dragon gives the guy a heart.
Boy,
You never seen Dragonheart?
I don't think I have.
David Thewlis is like a shitty little like rich boy king who like gets injured in battle, and they go to a dragon who's Sean Connery, and he was like, "This kid's dying." He was like, "I'll give him half my heart as long as he's a good king," and he gives him half his heart. He's a bad king. He's bad, but And then Dennis Quaid is a knight in it. You gotta see. We should do a whole episode on Dragonheart.
Or we'll save it for the Dennis Quaid
The Dennis Quaid
filmography.
episode.
That could be a pretty decent episode. I mean, at this point, Jack Quaid is building himself quite the catalog.
Yeah, we'll get him. Maybe we'll get his brother to come on. But season 3 is one. There's a lot of great stuff in it, but it definitely is like they're getting a little wilder. Carrie Coon is really good in it, but they do some wild stuff in season 3.
They do. So the whole spiel is that Ray, who's the less successful twin brother, is kind of involved in trying to get ahead, get wealthy, and it ends up in the death of him pretty early on as he's like arguing with his brother over this, but that also ends up in the accidental death in the stepfather of the police chief, who is Gloria Burgle, as you mentioned, played by Carrie Coon. So now she's kind of like investigating Ray, and then by association, his girlfriend Nikki. Because I think doesn't Nikki end up like accidentally killing the stepdad? Isn't that what happens?
I think that's what it is. I know Scoot McNairy is involved.
That's right. I think yeah, somehow I remember it's like an accident though. Like they didn't mean to kill him. Like I think they were like trying to like rob him or something like that, and it just turned
Yeah,
it.
like Scoot McNairy is like a parolee of Ewan McGregor's, and they're kind of using him to do something, and that goes wrong, and that guy ends up dead.
Yeah, and so it's just like everybody kind of gets involved with each other here. Again, it's just sort of like the pieces moving closer together, and yeah, Ray ends up dead, and so Nikki's like out to basically get revenge on these guys, and don't. And then we end up meeting one of the hired guns again from season one, right? Doesn't she like meet him on the prison bus when she gets caught?
Yeah, isn't it like the deaf guy, or is it Evan Goldberg? We didn't even talk about Evan Goldberg and the deaf guy.
Yeah, Adam Goldberg.
Adam Goldberg.
Yes.
Evan Goldberg's the guy who writes with Seth Rogen.
Yeah. But yeah, no, in season one we kind of, because I mean, again, how deep is the cast and how deep are the characters that there's these two guys that are hired to kind of intimidate Martin Freeman's character in season one. One of them ends up dead, and he has a brother who's deaf, and we find that he's been arrested years later, and he runs into Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character in season three. and
And isn't he somehow like involved with Zahn or Zane from season 2?
um I think what we learn is that they might be like family somehow, but I can't remember what the exact connection is. Again, it's been a long time since I've seen.
Folks, if you haven't seen Fargo the series, I think this has got to be bringing you in. Like it's got all these like layers and connections, but it's not annoying with it.
No, I think what's hard to recount some of these is that they do a good job of kind of putting these subtle connections in place where you recognize a name or you recognize a location, and you're like, oh, this is where so and so committed that murder, or this is where so and so fell through the ice. Like we're right back at that scene, and oh, here's that character from, 2 seasons ago, and now I'm remembering that guy was a really efficient killer, and now he's helping her out, which is exactly what happens. Is that we see Nikki basically come back to try and take revenge and ruin you know Ray's brother Emmett, kind of blaming him for his death by kind of just destroying his his life. But really, it's just sort of Emmett that is getting his life destroyed by this loan shark. He's just like in too deep all around. I don't know. What did you think overall of it?
Overall, like I said, it's hard because I find the Fargo series very rewatchable, especially around the winter time. I love to throw it on like in the background. I like it. Season 3, I won't throw on as much because like there's a lot of like gross out stuff in it. That's my only thing about it. There is a great episode where they use I don't know if you call it a score, if it's like a piece of music, but the Peter and the Wolf. There's like the orchestral story where it uses all the different instruments to tell the story of Peter and the Wolf. They do an episode set to that like orchestral score, and it's fascinating. But they also have a really weird animated sci-fi episode. This is where they're really kind of stretching and it doesn't completely work. And I think if you look at season 4, that's when they kind of go off boat a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think this had an interesting story in place, but it definitely felt like some of the pieces didn't pull together, and I kind of felt like they didn't get to maximize Carrie Coon, who I mean is a fantastic actress, but it felt like not a really juicy role for her. Like she was just sort of there to move the story along and start to put the pieces together. Whereas we're just sort of watching everybody else run rampant. And we didn't even talk about Michael Stuhlbarg, who is another guy. Just
Well,
man,
I love Stuhlbarg.
man, so good. But yeah, he ends up like what, like partially paralyzed because David Thewlis's character essentially is like it like knocks him down and is like just
Makes him
intimidating.
drink pee.
Yeah. Ugh, it is a gross season. You're right. Maybe that's kind of why I've like partially blocked it from my memory.
But yeah, overall, I think it's interesting. They tried stuff. It's pretty cool that Ewan McGregor played twins. Twins.
Twins. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's not the cleanest season. I think it's got some good parts. Again, I think even Ewan McGregor doing two roles felt a little, I don't know if he was stretched too far thin or just maybe not able to put his all into one character. And so he kind of felt a little underwhelming in him sometimes.
I don't know. I don't mind. I think I don't know. He's kind of the type of guy I feel like he tries his best, and then maybe they just didn't have the time for him to do two roles, but I don't have a problem with him in it. I just think it's too all over the place and a little too gross. Nothing wrong with it, just kind of gross.
Yeah. There was just a little, I don't know, a little too much going on, which became an even bigger problem in season 4. So I think, a lot of goodwill by FX after this season concluded where, a lot of people still like the season a lot. And I think there is a lot to like about it. But at the same end, I think a lot of people expected it was, a little bit of a step back from the previous two. Kind of like, okay, maybe not their finest, but we'll see what's going to happen for season 4. And yeah, season 4 is just a little bit of a mess.
I'll just preface and say I don't remember anything from season 4. I was very excited for it because Chris Rock was going to be headlining it. And anytime Chris Rock is doing like a performance, I get very excited. He is not very good, if I recall from watching this show. And I was also excited for, I can't think of his name right now, but he's Paddington. He's Q.
Oh,
That actor.
Ben Whishaw. Yeah.
Ben Whishaw, who I remember is really good in what I saw of season 4, but it just wasn't connecting. I don't know if you remember season 4, if you finished season 4. I'd love to hear your recounting of it.
So I did finish season 4. This was the first one I watched live. The other 3 were pretty much, I think, kind of an early pandemic, maybe even before it started watch, because I remember we were caught up by the time season 4 dropped at the like September 2020, because it was the season was announced in August 2018, and I think that was about the time that I was trying to start thinking about it, because I'm like, well, this show's been going on, because I had the same thoughts you did at first, Fred. I was like, a Fargo TV show, how good could this be? But then I kept hearing it was really good, and finally I was like, all right, let's give it a watch. So yeah, it was in 2018 that 4th season was renewed and ultimately went into production in 2019. Some delays due to the pandemic, so production was suspended for at least 2 weeks, but then ultimately they were able to finish it up. And yeah, so it went from an original premiere date of April 19th all the way back to September of 2020. I guess here's my thing is like, I think they had some interesting ideas on the plate. Again, the whole thing's kind of borrowed out of the concept of season 2 of like, well, we had this Kansas City Mafia that was a really interesting organization. We had some really rich and like fulfilling characters out of there, whether it was, um, we had Mike Milligan, and then we had I don't remember what
Garrett.
Garrett. I was like Brad Garrett's character. I don't even remember what his character name was.
I know, I was being a butt.
there's just there's too many characters in this season. There's too many things to follow. And it's like they got a lot of big names, but didn't really have as much to do with them because, like, Timothy Oliphant is in this season, and
I forgot.
a lot of people would have forgotten because not only does he not get enough to do, but it's even worse because they kill him early on, and you are like, he's maybe one of the few engaging characters in the season.
I
Um,
don't think anyone has ever had more Riz than Timothy Oliphant.
and they put him as a like sheriff in 1950. It's literally like the man can never not be a cop in in a show, but not a modern cop. He's always like pre 1970.
Or if it's like Justified, it's modern day, but he's like an old timey cop in the modern day.
He's gonna do by his own rules. All right, he's not gonna play by modern society's expectations. So season 4 takes place in 1950. It's the Cannon Limited, which is a gang led by Loy Cannon, played by Chris Rock, who are threatening to usurp the Fada family, led by Justo Fada, who's played by Jason Schwartzman, as the head of like the Italian family, basically. And they are the ruling crime organization in Kansas City. So the Cannon family is essentially coming in to try and squeeze them out. But to maintain peace between these two gangs, there's like a ritual that occurs between every gang over the years. And to maintain peace, the groups agree to honor tradition of trading their youngest sons so that they go and live in opposite households. And that way, there's always kind of a uneasy alliance because they're like, well, we're never going to attack that house because my son is over there. And we see like a history where at first it's the Irish family like runs Kansas City, and then they're kind of overtaken by like a Jewish run family, which is where Ben Wishaw's character comes in, because then the Jewish like gang essentially gets encountered by the Fada family, the Italian gang, and it's always like a more marginalized group of people keeps coming in like to the city, and like, but they're a gang, so they're like, it's like their way of like gaining power and kind of establishing themselves. And basically like that all gets jeopardized between the Jewish families and the Italian families because Ben Wishaw, was a son of like the Jewish like mafia leader, basically like betrayed them because he felt so betrayed personally that like they would give him to another household. Like he loved his family, but he was like, I can't believe my dad would do this to me. And so he becomes like a member of this Fada family, the Italian gang. And then we have Chris Rock leading the Cannon family, who is like an all black gang. So it's just this constant, there's a lot of like racial commentary that I think does hit, but then it just, I don't know. It's just sort of inconsistent throughout the season, I think. And then you just get these weird characters like Jessie Buckley's in this show as like a nurse, and her whole subplot kind of doesn't really, she's just sort of inserted into the story for no reason.
She's like in there, like doing like an angel of death thing where she's like a
Yeah.
evil nurse, like who hurts, like, her patients or something, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And it feels like they devote so much time to this character and her story that it takes away, I think, from the things they really could have done with these other two gangs, because you're really trying to get this feel for who these gangs are, but then we have to spend so much time with like Timothy Oliphant and these other cops that are in the city, and they're trying to investigate these two gangs, like, because like they're FBI, and it just, I don't know. It's like there's really no, outside of like one little girl character that we follow, there's really no good person in this season either. So it's really hard to like,
Mhm.
you know, you're just kind of watching a lot of bad people like be bad to each other, and I don't know. It's just a kind of mess. Yeah.
And that was kind of the reception. Everyone was kind of like, people were kind of out on the Fargo TV show for a while, and there was a big gap, from season 4 to season 5. I think it left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth, which is a bummer because it had almost the most potential out of all the seasons.
It did. I think there was a lot there that they could have done. And like they had some interesting characters. Like, don't get me wrong. Like there's a guy, his name is Salvatore Esposito, who plays Jason Schwartzman's brother. And I remember everybody was like so in on this character because he had these like big crazy eyes. And like he just like every action of his was like to the level like 11. Like he's just up to 11 on everything he's doing. It was like, what is with this dude? You were kind of waiting for this character to keep coming back because he was so good. I don't know, man. There was another character who was like the second in command to Chris Rock. His name was Dr. Senator, which is like one of the greatest character names ever.
Dr. Senator, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember who the actor is. Oh, Glenn Turman, and he is just a fantastic actor. A guy I've never really like noted before, but then he kept showing up and stuff. Like that was that last movie with Chadwick Boseman in it. Do you remember this one? Ma
Ma Rainey's
Rainey's.
Black Bottom.
That's it. Yeah. Like he's in
Yeah.
that and he's really good. I was just like, who is this guy? Where has he been? He was like, he's like 70
Which was
already.
around this time too.
Yeah, just another like good character actor who shows up on Fargo, and you're just like, who the hell? This guy's 70. I feel like I've never seen him in anything. And then like all you see them in is like stuff from now on, and like you are always paying attention when they show up because they're just such a fantastic performer. And it's just it's a lot of like people doing some good stuff, but there's just not a lot to it. I don't know. That's the way I would describe it.
Yeah, I just wish they could have pulled off a little more season 4, but there was a lot of potential, and I actually will probably revisit because I didn't finish it, but there's so many great actors. I'm kind of curious how it did all end.
Yeah, I think you will not regret watching it. I think it's still worth revisiting, but don't expect the best season you're ever gonna watch. That's the only thing. But then after the long layover, you're right, Fred. Like season 5, I think kind of took a lot of people by surprise when it got announced.
Yeah, I thought they weren't going to make any more, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the way that 4 was received, and I think it still got decent reviews, but I think a lot of critics were like, yeah, this one wasn't it. Like, it's just, but it was back in February 2022 that FX did renew Fargo for a 5th season, but it kind of felt like we didn't really hear anything about it up until almost like a month or two before it was about to come out. And I remember reading an article. They're like, Fargo's coming back in like November of 2023. And I'm like, really? And then I started reading the cast list. They're like, yeah, it's got Juno Temple, it's got John Hamm, it's got Jennifer Jason Leigh. And suddenly I'm like, well, tell me more.
Mhm. Yeah, and I remember, I think we talked about this I think it was like the week before it aired. I was like, I'm excited for this. And these are all names I like, but it definitely, I could feel the scale back almost of kind of like a course correction of season 4. Like John Hamm's a big name, but he's a TV actor, like he's done movies, but he's a TV guy. Like Jennifer Jason Leigh is not a household name. I was like, kind of like, this feels a little like we're getting the budget Fargo. But I gotta say, going into it and watching the first episode, I was like, we're a little bit back, baby. I'm gonna say a little bit back. It didn't hit like season 1 for me, but that first episode, I was like, I'm happy.
Yeah. I mean, there is just, it's a lot of good, like you said, TV actors, like Juno Temple coming fresh off Ted Lasso. I think if anybody watched Ted Lasso, you're going to recognize Keely right away. And then you're going to hear her talk and you're like, what the hell? Like she can do a Fargo accent. Like what the heck? And it's just a lot of names that you're like, oh shit, it's the dude from Stranger Things. Like Joe Keery's in this too. And
Guy from Kids in the Hall.
yeah. Oh, and he plays a great part. Dave Foley, right?
Yeah, Dave Foley is excellent in season 5.
Yeah, I think that's him, right? Or is it?
Yeah, Dave Foley, because he's Flick in A Bug's Life.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I mean, you're right, man. I think this might be probably my favorite season so far since season 2. And I think we only got 2 episodes left at the time of our recording here. But yeah, it's been an awesome season with just it feels like the Fargo that we were talking about earlier on in this episode. Just we were like very excited. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of like, I don't know, like suspense and weird actors who kind of fulfill that. But I think just getting John Hamm, who is the constant professional, I mean, he's always almost all underrated just because of how excellent he is at everything he does.
Yeah, and I felt bad calling him a TV actor. That's not how I rate him. John Hamm could be in all the movies. Believe me. Top Gun Maverick, I mean, he was great in that. But I'm just saying, like, that's where he's been successful, at least, more often than not. But I do feel the restraint in this season. They do big stuff, and the some of the most recent episodes that have aired really go for the fences and do some wild stuff. But I can definitely feel, and I say this as like a positive, like a course correction after 4.
Oh, 100%. They were like, we went way too off the mark here, and we need to pull it back and try and get a hold of this thing again and just let us go. But there's this guy in this season named Sam Spruill who plays a dude named, I mean, that's written, I think it's like Ole Munke or something like that, but it looks like Old Munch. And he is just the weirdest. He's like the classic, like, Peter Stormare from the original Fargo movie. Like,
Yes, that's who I think of.
he is. And just the way he talks. And there's like this weird, subtle, like suggestion that he's like centuries old potentially. Like he's like immortal. It's like, and that's like the amount of weird I want in Fargo of like, don't tell me if this is true. Like that could be his ancestor for all we know. But just leaving the door open to possibility like this guy's been alive since like the Middle Ages.
So, are you more okay with aliens or ancient druids or whatever he is?
I'm okay with subtlety. If you
Then why are you watching Fargo?
I mean, look, man, and we didn't even talk like we haven't talked about a lot of the beats that happen. I think for multiple reasons. I think there's a lot to say about this show, but like Ben Whishaw gets sucked up by a tornado, and that's how he dies in season 4. It's just like weird shit like that I'm like, at least it's somewhat more believable than guy got distracted by a UFO overhead and then got shot and killed. Just don't confirm to me the thing is what I'm seeing, and maybe leave the door open for like, is this just the way somebody perceived it to happen, or is this actually happening? Because I think once you lean into the fact that like this really weird shit is happening, like I don't know, it takes me out of it just a smidge. I mean, you're okay though with all the weird?
Yes, because I kind of feel like they're pulling from the larger scope of Coen Brothers movies when they get weirder. They're not necessarily pulling from Fargo. And if I give it that sort of lens, like I feel sort of the big swings remind me a lot of the Stuhlbarg movie, the Coen Brothers, A Serious Man,
Hmm.
how that kind of gets very heightened towards the end. Like that's a movie that I think about a lot when I watch the Fargo series. And I mean, I also think about Oh Brother, We're Out Thou. Not just the tone, but like the heightenedness of it. So when it goes big, it doesn't bother me because I know what world I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it.
Yeah. I guess I'll say this. I don't mind when it leans into some of the really, yeah, big swings. Like here's a guy who might be an old druid or something like that. Here is a man who's really obsessed with UFO encounters that he's seen. I think it's just like short of an alien walking up and like shooting somebody, and that's how a character's journey ends. It's like, I can extend my my disbelief only so far, I feel like, with some stuff. And I think even in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, like, certainly what's happening in that movie doesn't feel 100% like grounded. But at the same end, I think it's not so unbelievable that you can't believe that these guys would be in these scenarios, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think they don't have ones that are full out in every season of Fargo, but they do like the Deus Ex Machina
Mhm.
event, which like some unexplained event that like adjusts the plot of the story. That to me, I feel like a Fargo season will get a couple of those. Now, if I watch a season where they're throwing those out left and right, I'm gonna lose the thread a little bit. But like I said, I'm comfortable in the world knowing that things might get a little surreal.
Sure. I think that's totally fair to say too. But yeah, I think we are excited to finish up season 5 of Fargo. And I mean, we'll maybe just tease it a little bit here, Fred, that maybe we'll end up talking about the end of season 5 in a later episode. We might be revisiting some TV from the year 2023.
Yeah, I think there's a chance it might end up on a list for me.
Yeah, we'll tell you guys to stay tuned for some more announcements, maybe some new bonus content coming up in the very near future. But before we get to that, Fred, I think perhaps unless you have more to share and thoughts on season 5, which I kind of like to save at least a little bit, that maybe we start going to coulda woulda shoulda.
I'm ready for coulda, woulda, shoulda because I am just gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna say one thing, and that's it. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Give me season 6 of Fargo, Milwaukee. Give me William Defoe in there. Give me Mark Ruffalo. After that, you can go wild. But give me those two guys in it, and I want my Midwest story told in Fargo. Fargo, Milwaukee. Which sounds dumb, but that's what they're doing, right? Like it's Fargo, Kansas City. They don't call it that, but it's
Yeah.
not Fargo every time.
Well, I think because season 5 went back to Fargo proper, like that area. So we're back in South Dakota in that season, and because we see John Hamm is like a sheriff, and he's got like a lot of like power. Like he's got like a constitutionally elected sheriff, and he's like basically got kind of like a militia built up on a farm.
He wasn't at January 6th, but he had some eyes in the field at least.
Yeah, he certainly did. He had operatives on site. Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys. But, like, I think what I liked about this season is that they did kinda come back to that era, even if they're sort of not around that same spot. Like, you gotta just be in the proper Midwest. So I could get down with a Milwaukee.
Or not even Milwaukee. Scratch that. I'm going to say I want it to be like Fargo meets Uncut Gems at Lambeau Field. Like it has to be some sort of heisty crime Lambeau Field thing.
Trying to steal a Lombardi trophy from the Packers, Hall of Fame.
Yeah, because they haven't done that. Give me like the Logan Lucky Fargo season, but it's in
Oh,
Milwaukee at Lambeau Field, or Wisconsin at Lambeau Field.
yeah, Green Bay. Yeah, that'd be great. I could see it. I could get down with that. Yeah, because so I definitely like that idea. I also kind of love the idea of trying to, I don't know, go back in time again a little bit, but maybe not so far. Like, so I think the Fargo movie takes place in 87. So we haven't quite split the difference. So it's like, get me a late 90s, takes place like maybe right back in like the Twin Cities again, or maybe that greater area. Give me some stuff where people are trying to get away to Fargo again. I kind of want to revisit that territory, but like see maybe like who else is in there and who's reading these headlines of all this crazy shit that's been going on, and getting ideas of like because I think one of the best parts of season 5, and I know we didn't really talk about the plot, because like the whole story of season 5, just to give a quick overview, and again, we'll talk about it another time soon, but is that Dorothy, who is played by Juno Temple, gets basically like discovered through like this opening episode by her ex-husband, who's played by John Hamm, and he sends people to try and kidnap her to bring her back home because she's a runaway, because he was abusive when they were together, and so she's with a whole new guy, and so it kind of starts to feel like the plot of Fargo again, because her mother-in-law, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, suspects that she's kidnapping herself in order to extort money from her husband, who's very much in like that John Carroll Lynch, like all real, like, you know, simple guy there to support, loves his wife, loves his family. But there's something familiar and simple. And I think that's almost what you meant by restrained, right? Like it felt a little safe.
Yeah.
And what I kind of want to see is them go back to that area, like kind of where like the movie takes place, but like let's get, you know, kind of wild again. Let's find something like where you don't have cell phones involved. Like you can kind of be off the grid a little bit. You know, it's like we're going to run a whole thing where we're going to try and like, you know, like kidnap a CEO and actually like extort the money, like the person you would expect them to try and like kidnap and extort money from or something like that.
Mhm.
You know,
I would love to be in like your 90s like version of this. Like I'd be like a strip club owner in St. Paul or something who gets in too deep with it.
yeah. Like it's just, you know, it's like I just love watching desperate people trying to do stupid shit. And I would love them to kind of get back to somebody who thinks he's too smart for his own good. And we kind of got that a little bit with Ian McGregor's character of the one or less fortunate brother in season 3. And I liked that, where he's like, we're gonna get rich, we're gonna come up with this scheme, we're gonna get the stamp back, and we're gonna sell that for a boatload of money, and we're gonna make it, kind of knowing all along it's sort of a doomed expedition. But yeah, I don't know. I love to get back there and try something. I guess that is what season 3 was trying to do, but it got way too weird. It got way too much on its plate.
Although I will say this, since we're not doing a power ranking of our favorite seasons, I will say I think I take the high. I think so far overall I like season 5 better than 3, but I think I like the highs of season 3 better than season 5.
Oh, interesting. All right, I can give you that. I think I would say season 5 so far has been a little more of a complete product for me.
Definitely.
But yeah, I could definitely get on board with you saying season 3 had some really good highs, and especially to that thing once Mary Elizabeth Winstead broke out of the prison bus with the dude from season 1. That seems like things really elevated quick, and it went into full Fargo mode.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, any other coulda, woulda, shouldas you would share?
No, that's just what I want. I want a heisty Lombardi Milwaukee story.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and I want my 90s St. Paul. Maybe you could get like Randy Moss or something from the Vikings. You can get your football tie-in. Maybe they're trying to kidnap the owner of the Minnesota Vikings in the late 90s. I could see that.
I know nothing of sports, but I find it fascinating when it's injected like in Uncut Gems, where I know people who know sports are watching the end of Uncut Gems like that was a real game, you know? Like I like that people have that. And I think that would be a cool like a sports thriller season of
Yeah.
Fargo.
This is how I win.
This is how I win, you know?
Yeah, this is how
If
I
you don't
win. Yeah.
mind.
If you don't mind there. Fred, I got one thing left though to say for this whole thing. And that is you betcha. No. I think Fargo as a total it's pretty fantastic. I think from the movie on down, you're really not going to find a low beat. And even season 4, which obviously we dogged a little bit. It's if you're okay with mid, that's probably about the level that it presents. Everything is pretty high quality, and that's a high bar.
Yeah, I probably didn't finish season 4 because it was the pandemic.
Yeah. Kind of not the vibe you wanted at that time, even with sort of the cold vibes, right?
Mhm.
So I think that gets us to our power rankings then. And Fred, I think I have one of my favorite prompts that I've wanted to give us here because we could have gone for the best characters. We could have gone for the best seasons, the best episodes, the best moments. But I want you to rank your top 3 accents.
Well, I gave this a lot of thought because I wasn't going to look at all the different accents and be like, who's really given Midwest in this? Because that's not the assignment when giving the best Midwest accent on Fargo. You have to give a movie star Midwest accent. And that's why, so my number 3, I'm going to give it to Juno Temple. I don't think
Wow.
that's a good Midwest accent, but that's the most movie star Midwest accent I've seen. I almost wanted to just give her number 1. Number 2, if we're going to get into it, I'm going to say Patrick Wilson, just because I don't know if that accent is good, but if you look at that face, make that noise, it makes sense to me. Number 1, I'll give it to Allison Tolman because she's probably doing it the most down the middle and like the most like correct. I don't know. It just seems like an actual person. She's doing like a real Midwesterner.
Yeah, so we got Dot, and then we've got Lou Salverson, and then his daughter Molly. Yeah, Alison Tolman was really good in season 1. She really did do a very genuine Midwest accent. Something about the English or people from the UK and their ability to do Midwest accents. I don't know if it's just something that is familiar with like the twang. I don't know, but they do it very well. Because I think I'm actually gonna go a little off the cuff with the first one and say Kirsten Dunst. I thought did a
It's a good
really
one.
really good Midwest accent in season 2. Her accent is just so gosh darn honest, and she just doesn't understand why people don't believe her when she tells them that.
Look, Kiki's got the juice. I've been saying it for years.
Kiki's got the juice. I love it. But yeah, so Peggy Blumquist from season 2, played by Kirsten Dunst, is definitely my 3 on the list. My number 2, I'm definitely gonna have to go. Oh man, I was kind of teeter tottering here too between a couple people because there's been some really good ones in this recent season. I got to stick to my guns, right?
Yeah, you got to stick to your guns, okay?
I
But if you
got.
don't, that's fine as well.
I don't. I know it.
Hey,
Can I?
hey, hey, just don't work yourself up. You know, you're going to get yourself in a spin.
Can I? Can I cheat and pick William H Macy?
I guess.
He'd be my honorable mention.
I would have picked Francis McDormand then.
I think his is just he reminds me of a lot of guys I've met in my life. Yeah, yeah, that just it just doesn't make sense. They just got to give him the money.
You got to get the true coat.
The true code. No, I'll tell you the person this season. I'm going to give a more recent one. I think her name is pronounced Richa Morjani. And I'm like, my God, I have met women who sound exactly like the accent that she's doing. She plays one of the cops in season 5.
With the golfer husband.
Yeah, the piece of shit golfer husband.
I mean, that guy's the worst.
Yeah, who's played by another alum from White Lotus. That's
He's like a
Lucas Gage.
kid actor, right?
Yeah, Lucas Gage, I think is his name. But yeah, Richa Morjani, who plays Olmsted is the name of the officer. But holy cow. It is like I think she's doing the best work. As much as I thought Juno Temple is bringing it, I thought she's crushed the Fargo accent for me.
Juno Temple's in the she puts the mustard on, which I'm here for.
Yeah, it's definitely there. But for number one, Fred, I am gonna pick a man. I'm not gonna pick Francis McDormand or William H. Macy. They're the honorable mentions. Martin Freeman's gonna get a number one for me because I don't think the first season works as well if you don't believe him to be the actual like guy, Midwest guy. Just well, geez, I don't know what you're talking about there. I was here the whole time. I got my alibi.
Well, I think his works so well because it's a good accent, and also his characters that he has played in England are Midwesterny. Like a lot of the times he can be like the smart ass asshole, like when he was on The Office, but he is kind of like the all shucksy guy in England, in English movies.
Yeah, like the country English guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it just I don't know. I think him selling that character so well, his dynamic with Billy Bob in the first season really sold the whole thing. Like I think it just clinched it, and I don't know, him being able to just do that accent, it was great. So I had to pick one kind of deep cut, and I think Olmsted in this season, she's just, especially when she's just telling off her husband, like in one of those Reason episodes, it's so good.
For sure.
But yeah, those are my three, Fred.
Those are good choices.
So I think that does get us to the end of this episode. Then Fargo. But as we mentioned, so we're going to be talking about doing some more bonus content for you guys this year, some added content, and we'd love to give you some more final thoughts or some overall thoughts on season 5 once we get to the finish line with that. So maybe stay tuned for the next month or so where we'll actually have something dropping for you. And that's all we'll say for now, just because we haven't quite finalized what that's going to look like. But it is coming, and we do have something for you there. So you have time to catch up on Fargo if you want to see how season 5 plays out, so that we don't spoil anything else there.
Yeah, I still have to find out.
We can't wait to see what's going to happen, Fred. It's an exciting finish on the horizon here. But anything you would like to plug before we say goodbye?
No, I just appreciate everyone listening to the podcast. I appreciate Tom for making this happen every time. I'll just put it to you to let everyone know what's good with the pod.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can find us, State of the Franchise, Fred and Tom. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, YouTube. You can look us up. We got our own link tree with all these resources that you can find for us. If you'd like to leave us a one-time donation, there's an option on there. We'd appreciate that. Otherwise, please rate and review us. That's the best thing you can do to get the word out about our podcast. It's a really quick activity. You can pull it up in like 15 seconds and get it done to add a rating. You could do it in Apple Podcasts app or in your Spotify or wherever you are getting this podcast currently. And stay tuned for next time, where we will be having ourselves a tournament of sorts. In fact, it's a spicy tournament in that it is a spicy chicken sandwich. Blind taste test. You ready, Fred?
Oh, I'm so ready. I don't know why when I hear spicy chicken, I want to make the whip noise.
I don't know, man. That's just because it's getting hot up in here. I don't know what that has to do with whipping, but it just sounded right. Maybe it's because it's the opposite of a cool whip.
Yeah, I guess it's the opposite. I like it though. I'm excited to have some chicken sandwiches.
Me too. It's gonna be a great time. We'll share some more details about that as it comes up. But thank you all for listening again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Just charge my phone, drive, listen to you. And what the tall